Hey, hey, hey.
How's it going?
It's podcast day.
It is definitely podcast day. Oh, man. I am not looking forward to today.
Why?
I'm scared.
Because your wife's going to rat out all your dirty secrets?
Yes.
So if you didn't notice, there's two pretty ladies in our studio.
Yeah.
And we're a little giddy because they're our wives and we like them.
Yep.
And so,
a
little bit. So we're excited. We're going to talk ministry, marriage, and marriage in ministry, and just kind of whatever dirty laundry comes out. Don't fire us. What happens. But so I guess
it's okay.
I guess we'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Okay.
So
I'm Heather. I am Caleb's wife.
I'm Sue. I'm JP's wife.
Most of the time.
Some days, no.
only on days that end in Y.
Today is my day off.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk kind of the struggles of being married to a pastor and just kind of your side of the story as pastors' wives. I know both of you. I know both of you love that term, but maybe I was thinking about this today. Maybe a fun little exercise would be, JP, do you know Sue's favorite Bible verse?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's Romans chapter 10. Hold on here. Let me look.
Read it.
I don't know the particular verse, but I can read it for you.
Want me to give you a hint?
No.
Okay.
I don't need a hint, baby. I got it. I'm going to read the verse before it.
Okay.
Romans 10, 14, and 15. How then shall they call upon him in whom they have not believed? And how then shall they believe in him who they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how will they preach unless the men are sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the glad tidings of good things. Am I right?
Wow.
Nice.
That was right.
Bonus
point for me.
Brownie points.
1 point for me.
Sue, why is that your favorite verse?
Gosh.
You didn't know you were going to talk on the podcast.
No,
Yeah, I mean, that's what a podcast is.
I don't want to get emotional.
Think about this. All your friends from high school are going to see this.
Oh gosh. Okay, it's my favorite verse because it's probably the one I feel like is the closest to my heart. Years ago, when I was graduating, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew God had something different for me, I felt anyway. And so ministry and missions was kind of the main thing that God brought to my mind. And that verse, it just says everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God definitely had something different. I mean, you married me. What are you
Yeah, wow.
that's different.
Missed that one.
That's been a mission field.
So yeah, that in itself. So what's JP's favorite verse?
Oh,
Probably, I don't know, it's Romans. Romans 3:5? No? What is it?
you may read it
You
to you?
get 2 points because you got mine. I didn't.
Mine is in Romans.
Okay.
Hold this, please. Thank you, baby.
Heather's brain is over here racing like Caleb's going to
Like,
ask me
oh,
next.
no.
What is his?
Where is that verse? That's not 19.
All right,
I have a lot of favorite verses. You go.
We'll skip. We'll come back.
Okay.
Heather, what is mine?
Oh, goodness.
Oh, I found it.
First Peter. It's in Peter. It's First Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness. I need to...
I think I know what his
I was
favorite
going to say,
verse is.
I need you to pull up your arm.
Do you ever get his emails?
I was going to say, every email I send has it in it. 1 Peter 4:10 and 11, 4:10 says, each of you has received a gift. Use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks as one who speaks oracles of God, whoever serves as one serves by the strength that God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and dominion forever. So that one's always been mine. 4:10's always been mine. Just the idea of serving in everything we do. And then 11 to just kind of, whether you're speaking, teaching, or serving, whatever you're doing it by God's power. And that's mine. And yours
Oh my goodness.
is tattooed on your foot, Jeremiah
Yeah, so you had a
29:11.
cheat sheet right here. Okay, so what is Jeremiah 29:11?
Jeremiah, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans of righteousness and prosper. And I always mess up the words,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's planned for good. And you got that tattooed in 2017.
Yeah.
Before we met,
Yep.
when you were going through a really hard time, and it kind of helped lead you
Out
through
of
a hard time.
that out of context on my foot verse. Yes, absolutely.
So,
I
JP,
did.
did you find yours?
I did.
Yeah.
But it's 3 verses. It's
Okay.
not.
Mine's 2.
And I'm thinking, I know. Okay, so here it is. Romans chapter 5. For as through one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, even so through the obedience of one the many were made righteous. And the law came in that the transgression might increase, but where sin increased, grace abounded all the more. That as sin reigned in death, even so grace might reign through righteousness to eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. That's my favorite. Anyway,
It's hard to pick a favorite, but I just thought that was
I
fun.
have a lot of
Yeah,
favorites.
I do too. I say 1 Peter 4 is my favorite, but that's just the go-to. But there's a lot of good
I mean,
ones. But
Yeah.
you know, I
So.
can't point to exactly. Well, that's the one I point to a lot.
that's the one. It's like picking your favorite ice cream.
It is.
But anyway, I thought that was just a fun little exercise. I was thinking about like if you guys knew each other's verse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sue, what would you say your biggest struggle being a pastor's wife is, or your biggest struggle with ministry in general?
Right. Being a pastor's wife or in ministry together, probably allowing him to share his time with other people. It sounds very selfish, but there's always a lot of needs. That's his role. But yeah, sharing what I consider my time, sharing it with other people. Yeah.
What do you think, Heather? Or JP? Heather?
Oh, I mean, I would absolutely agree with you in
Yeah.
that. And I have 3 under 3 at home right now. And
Yes.
so, I mean,
God bless you.
before we started, when Caleb shared that he was going to be possibly taking that trip to Chicago, that's a full day. That's leaving at 6 a.m. and coming home probably midnight. So that's that full day that I love my children. I love being with my children, but it's very taxing when he's doing ministry and I'm the one at home. And that kind of transitions into another area that I struggle with is my place. I love to be a leader. I love to be the forefront, the face, and just finding my place. My place is his wife, and I'm the one with the kids right now. During youth group time, we have a new baby who's not even 3 months old yet. So while we do have someone who watches our 2-year-old monsters during, I don't use that term lightly at all. Well, someone watches our 2-year-olds. I'm still watching our baby during youth group time. So it's just my place right now. I don't feel is as much by his side right now in ministry, as much as it is kind of taking a step back with the children right now.
And I will tell you that will change.
Yeah.
It's, just the season that you're in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but it is a really difficult season because at times
Very.
I do feel alone during the
remember that.
summer. Yeah, during the summer he went on a retreat and I was alone with the boys for 3 to 4 days. I mean, I had my mother who came out and helped me, so I wasn't like losing my mind.
Yeah.
But again, that was something where his place was leading his youth and my place was home with the children.
Yeah, I remember many years ago. I would be at the office
A lot of hours.
a lot of hours early in the morning. I was a dean at the college, and I wouldn't get home till sometimes 11, 12 at night. We had people in our home every night. And of course, nobody really teaches you the balance of ministry. Like when should I do this and when should I not do this and when should I, make time for certain things, because there's always, and I felt this way for many years. There's always a line at the door, and because my story includes, not really finding anybody at times to help me through my own struggles. I feel like, now that God has allowed me to mature through it, I want to be able to help other people and be available, but I can't do that to the exclusion of my family, my kids, or my grandkids, And I try to balance it out. It's hard. I mean, we get tired. We're not spring chickens anymore. Although you look like a spring chicken, baby.
Get some points for that.
I know I do.
We need a scorecard.
Yeah, we need a scorecard. But yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult balance. And one thing I was just, thinking about, our team here at Rives. I really believe our elders are, when it comes up, are super, super sensitive to that. And it's funny because if any of our guys at any time, say, hey, I'm going home for the day, or hey, I got to stay at home, or hey, I'm going to be with my wife today. They would rather have us do that than be consumed by ministry and not balance it well. So we kind of have a pretty good thing here with our guys. They're very sensitive to that.
Very, very fortunate for the environment.
Very fortunate.
They've structured for us and allowed the freedom and that kind of stuff. And that's something like I think it just comes from the shepherd's heart or the servant's heart. Like you're the same way. You just want to help everybody you can help. Yeah. And I like any single time a kid's struggling, it can be 12:30 at night. It can be, I've gotten those phone calls. Like,
Yes.
And I'm available, and I tell them, hey, I want to be available because, like you said, like there wasn't always people available for me, and I was fortunate that I had good youth pastors and parents and things that were available. But I want to be available to shepherd and help whenever.
Growing up, I was never in a youth group.
Really?
Did we even have youth group?
We had one, and I went occasionally, but never really got engaged. We played soccer and basketball a lot, so if they played soccer, I was like, yeah, I'll be there. I'll go play soccer.
But like Heather said, like a lot of youth group is relational. And so I have to be able to build a relationship with these kids. And sometimes that means a retreat that's 3 or 4 days or an all-nighter that's all night. And then I'm sleeping at home all day. And I don't do those often because they are awful. But you have to be able to build a relationship, and a relationship takes time. And so what I'm trying to do, because obviously the season we're in with 3 under 3, 5 years of marriage, like we're still a young couple. I'm trying to structure our youth group in a way where even though my passion is the kids and I love the teens in our group, I'm trying to invest more in my leaders and giving them free reign to go and serve. And that way I'm not, because kids take time. I mean, my kids take time and teens take time.
That's the whole spirit of equipping and maturing, and that's what we're about anyway. And you shouldn't be leading every event,
right?
You just shouldn't,
right?
You guys know there are times when I'll look at people on our staff and go, you should not be doing that. Don't. That's not your role. We have to train somebody else, and especially for if you're in a pastoral role, and I just love Sundays. Sometimes, it's like
it's a 12-hour work day for me.
It's what it feels like. You want to help people and you want to encourage people, and it's like it's very difficult at times because, we've been finding. Sue and I have talked about this just recently. Like, we want to be able to greet people, and we want to be able to manage our time while we're here, and be able to talk with as many people as possible, right? But a lot of times you get hung up. Not saying we don't want to do that, but we want to be conscious of how we manage our time with people, and it's the same at home. How we manage our time. Sue just finished a season working here with taxes she does every year, and sometimes we're like, it's 8:00, and we're like, do you want to just go up and sit in the bed and watch some TV? Next thing you know, we're both asleep. We're exhausted, worn out.
Yeah.
And it's a good worn out, but we have to manage it, and we're still trying to figure out how to manage it better because you can't do that every day.
Right.
A lot of people assume that we only work on Sundays.
Yeah.
And the reality is we're working 7 days a week, because I'll get a phone call on a Saturday and
you can't
at 3 a.m. and which I get, we want to be there.
And we love doing that. Like, I don't want to say I'm not available, but it's at the expense of family time. And I think every pastor I've ever talked to has wrestled with, okay, am I investing in my sheep? And am I investing in my sheep at home or my home too?
Right.
And so I think it is a good balance. And I'm so grateful for our elders and the way they'll tell us straight up, don't do that one. That one's not for you.
No, or you should be taking
Or
some time
go
off.
home. Yeah.
You need to
And
go
so
home.
I love that. And we have a supportive elders and they're just really good for us.
I think moms in general, wives and moms in general, if you have kids, their tendency is to make sure that the home and the relationships are being managed and cared for properly.
Yeah.
And when they see that, which I didn't realize until later on in our marriage, because I was a bit of a knucklehead early on, that the kids are missing out on influence from dad, right? And so that can be, and moms notice it way quicker than dads do, I think, at least for the majority. And so being sensitive to make sure you're prioritizing, okay, I can't go into church today. I got to stay home. Or, maybe I should not do that thing. Like tonight, we're having a community life group leaders meeting.
Yep.
I will not be there. I can promise you that. I will not be
skipped
there.
last week's meet, whatever last week's was.
I'm like,
Ministry
there's
leaders.
other people that we trust that, God has brought here and they're gifted and we're going to allow them to lead. And it's not just us leading this ministry. Like, this is not my church, not your church. It's the body of Christ that visit here, that go here, that invest here. It's their church. And we're hoping to, if we train and equip them, that means we don't have to be
exactly
doing it all the time.
Exactly.
And I think it's really important. Because here's what I know. And if Sue and I have spirited discussions at home,
loud, spirited
I like
ones.
how
Yeah.
you put
at times, and I say, okay, well, I'm going to work, right? When I get here, it's pretty hard for me to get engaged in what I'm doing because I know
It's not right at home.
it's something is amiss. I mean, we may not even be upset or angry at one another,
right.
but I can tell because we haven't connected on the enough or at the right level. Then we have to make sure that that's fit right, And it's not perfect.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and what Heather so humbly forgot to mention when she said she's watching the kids is she's actually working on a master's program,
Right.
working
Full-time job.
full-time recruiter
and
job,
has 3 babies.
3 kids, and supporting me in ministry.
Right.
Like Miss Humble over here, like
I mean, it's just a few things.
just a few things on her plate.
a
And
couple
so,
things.
and then I also had the full-time job, ministry, 3 kids, and
thinking
so-
about going to school.
and going back to school in the fall. And so, like, our lives, like you said, there are times when it's 8:00, and if the boys go,
Often.
if the boys go to sleep at 8, usually it's
Usually it's
9:30,
11.
10, 11, and we're just done. Like just-
Nothing.
That's where you look at the
nothing.
people around you that have offered to step in, moms, dads,
Oh, and
aunts, uncles, friends.
We use
So
those.
You know.
her birthday was last week, and I was telling somebody just yesterday. I was like, I had the opportunity to take my wife on 2 dates
Yeah.
in one day, and that was incredible.
so
Like
cool.
that sounds simple to somebody, but like the chance to go to lunch and dinner and
That's
Okay,
spend
can
big.
you not say that again?
That's dinner. night.
Sorry, I don't want to give you ideas, but yeah, like just the time and structured time and the availability to have time off of work, both of us and parents to step in. But anyway, back to ministry a little bit. So I asked, what was your least favorite thing? What's your favorite thing about being a pastor's wife?
She hates that term. by
I
the
know.
way.
That's why I keep using it, because she does too.
She does not like that.
Pastor's wife.
Come up with
I called her
something
the first lady the
Oh,
other day.
no.
And she was like
Let's
looking
not
at
do
me
that.
like, do not talk to me like
That's
that.
terrible.
So what's your favorite?
know-
What's the best part?
I like being able to do ministry together, and I love that we can like impact people's lives. I feel like we've been through so many things in our life, mostly marriage, and being able to stick through it and get through it, and have God bring us through the other side. It's common to have, struggles in your life and marriage. And I feel like that's something valuable that we can share. with other people. So I think, yeah, allowing God to use our lives is what I like best.
I think I would agree. I think what, like for us, what makes, like we sit down with a lot of couples,
Yeah.
and what makes, I think what helps is that when Sue and I are sitting with couples, right? When we talk about struggles and we talk about arguments and not agreeing, on some things, and then responding to each other negatively, and like we're not talking theory. It's not theory. It's something that we've actually been through, and have been able to kind of iron out and understand that we can actually have a loving conversation and disagree and be okay with one another, and it'd be okay, instead of trying to make sure that we agree on every point. And I know that will bring some ire from people, because there's ideas out there. Well, you and your wife have to agree on every point. You're in ministry, and
That will never
that is
happen.
just that might be normal. Then we're abnormal, because
abnormal
that's
too.
just not. I don't think that's how God created us, and we're gifted differently. We think differently. Many times, Sue will say something, or I will say something, and I'll say to Sue, "Well, babe, they don't think like you."
Yeah.
They're not thinking like you're
Right.
thinking, and then I have to recognize myself. Okay, they're thinking differently, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so to be able to sit down and talk with somebody on the level of reality instead of theory. Well, these are what the books say. Well,
This is what life says. Yeah.
yeah. Well, life says something different,
Yeah.
and then you add children to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which many times in our relationship, has been a point of difference,
Disagreement.
disagreement, and we've had to learn through that. And, I think our kids turned out pretty good. I mean, we all have issues. They have issues. I have issues. Sue has, we all do, right? But yeah, that's the learning curve.
I think going back, you were talking about the differences between men and women, which we're not going to get into on this podcast. Figure it out on your
That's
own.
another
Come to the
whole
Bible study.
podcast.
But I was
Going to Bible
reading,
study.
so in Bible study, we were going through it, but I was reading another book called Man Enough. And he made a really good point where God said, okay, let's make man in our image. And a lot of times men take that quote and exclude women.
Yeah.
But then he made women too. And so
In his image.
he gave man some of God's qualities. Then he gave woman some of God's qualities. And that's why it says when you come together, you're one in God's image. So there's compliments that Sue has that you don't have.
This is true.
There's compliments that Heather has
The
that
fried
I
chicken
don't
is
have.
unbelievable.
I believe it. But like, so I think
Bean
there's-
soup, not so much.
Oh,
But
did you win your
fried
competition?
It's your mother's
I did
bean
win the
soup.
competition.
Nice. But I think it's interesting that
Sorry, Mom.
we exclude
Sorry, Graham.
women in that, where like men were made in God's image, and no, like women were made in God's image too, and together we should be pursuing ministry wherever it's vocational, in your home, in your neighborhood, whatever your ministry looks like for you, your kids, whatever. But it should be together, coming together, and not just sexually, but like in a way
Yeah.
that represents God. As
Well, it explains, the verse, male and female created he, them. It's like there's no exclusion of separation in terms of image, creating in the image of God. But I think because of the culture,
yeah.
because of the departure from absolute truth,
Yep.
I think that has eroded to different levels that
And just the writer of that book, the same Man Enough book, he said, like, you talk about feminine qualities and manly qualities or masculine qualities, and then you look at the fruit of the Spirit. Look through that list, and I asked Heather this the other day. Look through that list and tell me which of those qualities are considered manly. Love,
Good
joy,
point.
peace, self-control, maybe, like gentleness, kindness. Those are usually not affiliated with masculinity. Those are feminine. And so it was a really interesting point that like, like we're supposed to come together and do ministry together. Dalton's going to reset the camera and then we'll jump back in.
I talked previously about my feeling my place has been more to step away from the kind of the spotlight. Before we had children, Caleb and I ran a youth group together, and we were a team. We did a VBS together, and so I shared that spotlight with him. But like I said, since having kids, it's been kind of take a step back. So one thing I really like is I love to watch Caleb. I love to be.
Heyo.
Yeah.
I love to be able to take a step back and watch him do ministry and be able to see the influence he has on kids and be able to see the influence he has on our own children. And it's absolutely been amazing to have not only just a pastor dad, but to have a Christian father in our house. I wasn't raised with that. And so, and I just said, even yesterday, my daughter's she's going to experience an entire different world than I experienced growing up. And that I could not ask for anything better than that. So just being able to see Caleb and support Caleb right now from home with the kids.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's like, yeah. He's got all warm and fuzzy
Warm and
now.
fuzzy.
Feel a little fuzzy.
Yeah, Sue didn't say anything about me like that.
Hey, now don't compare.
So, I mean, with that though, like Heather just said a key word, support. And in Genesis, we know women was made as a helper, not lesser, but as a helper. So,
Yeah,
JP,
different role.
How do you feel Sue helps you do ministry?
Oh, wow. So one of the big things that, for some reason we ended up meeting with a lot of people over the years, couples and all. Not that we did everything right, because we didn't. Our marriage was for a bit bad and horrible, because we didn't know how to do it. And so as we're meeting with people, I would sit down with couples at times alone, and I'd realize that there's like the benefit that Sue brings to like conversations like that is that she's able to see and hear things from a different perspective because she processes those things differently, and because she's a woman, she sees things differently where I lack. Like I don't have the ability, or I missed it, or I'm not listening properly. And so as far as being, the benefit, like to me, and I know this sounds weird, it's like I don't put it in terms of help meet. I know that's what the Bible says, and that's the role, and I get that and I understand that. But when I look at, like, if we're sitting down with a couple, our desire is to help them.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I can bring my gifts to the table and she can bring her gifts to the table, then we're partnering together, and she's bringing a different perspective than I bring. Mine is usually very pragmatic and to the point and brutally honest at times.
Yeah.
Where Sue introduces more of a perspective of how it affects men and women internally. And I've actually sat and listened to her say to a man, we're in counseling, and she'll say to a man, I've heard her say this, well, here's what your wife is thinking. Let me tell you what your wife is thinking. When you say that, here's what your wife is thinking. I can't speak to that because I don't have that.
Sometimes you don't know what your wife is thinking.
I don't. Yeah, I'm like, okay, man, what is she thinking? And I'm excited to hear. So it's just the benefit, and to me, it describes that whole idea of the concept of, as the role of men and women, not better than one another, created differently, different in giftments to support each other. The roles are different and the responsibilities are different, but that in no way is meant to limit either one, especially her, because she says things at times I'm like, man, I wish I would have thought of that. Yeah. I didn't think of that. I wasn't even thinking of that, And so it's been helpful in that way. Now, on the other side of the coin, There are times when we get in discussions, I'm like, okay, you can keep your opinion to yourself. I don't need that right now, And not that it's a bad thing, but and
It's kind of a manly pride because I do that. A
yeah,
lot too, where-
you appreciate it in certain situations where it's going to help, and then when it really like puts the
Yep.
the thumb over you, you're like, okay, enough of your insight. Thank you. Thank you for having that ability.
We're good here. Yeah.
Stop right now.
Stop.
So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the benefits. But it's it can it's a thing where a lot of ministries. It's a good thing to have a wife who wants to be in ministry with you. It can be a very difficult thing if you're in ministry and your wife doesn't want to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
That can be very difficult. And I'm not trying to, insult anyone, any wife that I get it. We get it. And, there were times early on where Sue was like,
Yeah.
not interested in that because it's just too much. And that came from me not balancing it well. It was just really a result of how I was leading her and our family, which was not always good.
Right.
But I've learned a thing or two,
Yeah.
in 30 some years. So,
Yeah,
how about you guys?
I think for me, so Heather has a teaching background. Like she went to school to be a teacher.
I taught youth
for
group age
taught
kids.
4 years in middle school.
That's a gift in and of itself right there.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so, and I don't have that background. Like I think I'm a naturally good teacher, but I'm not like teacher, And so a lot of times when I give a lesson and she's in youth group or was in youth group, I'd be like, "Hey Heather, how was that?"
And I'd let him
she
know.
would vomit the absolute truth.
I let him know how it
That
is.
was terrible, Caleb. And I'm like, oh, jeez. And she would just beat me up. But I wanted that feedback because I'm never going to get better if I don't ask. And so I would ask her, and even still, like if I preach and she's in on a Sunday morning, "Hey, how was that?" And she's like, "Well, you said this."
I do this every Sunday.
Yeah. And so for me to kind of ask her, "Hey, how was that? What can I do differently?" And like you said, I don't always take what she says.
No.
I mean, I take it in my mind, but I don't always, in context of ministry, she comes from structured school, go to the principal's office if you screw up. Where in ministry, I try to be more gracious
Right.
and try to, like I actually enjoy when kids talk back to me while I'm teaching. Because to me, even if it's a silly off the wall question, to me, it means they're listening.
You know what they're thinking.
I know what they're thinking, and so in youth group, I can say something, and this kid will raise his hand, and I know it's going to be something just, are aliens real? And I'm like, okay, well, or let's stay on topic, but you're still listening kind of to what I'm saying. And so I kind of be more gracious in that. She'll be like, "No, I wouldn't handle that. I'm shut that down." Like,
That's another
That's a
reason
teacher.
I
And
try
so-
to stay away from youth group right now.
so me trying to balance, like, okay, yes, I want to be gracious and show these kids love, but also I do need to kind of run this structured. And so trying to balance her input. And like I said, every time I teach and she's in the room, I ask her how it was.
Yeah.
Whether she says good or bad, I ask her because I value her opinion. And also right now, just the season we're in, her allowing me to do ministry while our kids are at home, tying her to a
It's
chair.
a lot.
Because our kids are a lot. And
Yes.
so there's a lot of times where, board meetings, we have ministry leader meetings, we have our group
We have meetings every week.
We
You
have
had men's Bible study.
men's Bible study, which now we have childcare for that. Thank you, Jesus.
Yes. Thank you, Jesus, and the elders.
And the elders.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
but for her to allow me the time, or if I get a phone call at 11 o'clock at night and I'm like, "Hey, I got to take this," and she may be mad, but she'll let me take it. And go.
I got a phone call a couple weeks ago. It was 4 a.m.
I think so.
Yeah, it's 4 a.m. Guy texted me. He's like, "I need help," and I was like, "And I really got to go." And she said to me, "Well, what would your dad do?" And I'm like,
Yep.
my dad would get up and help him. And then I think that's a lot of where I get that from. But going back to the speaking thing, it was about 3 weeks ago. We were driving home from church, and I said, "Babe, was I, how do you think it went? Was I clear? I'm always concerned.
Me
am
too.
I clear
Yeah.
about what I'm trying
Because
to
I don't want to
communicate?"
screw this up.
Yep.
No.
Like-
And so there was like
Hesitation.
like a 7 or 8 second hesitation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like, well, I'm like, well, what do you mean? I mean, I was like, I'm not devastated. But I was like, okay, what did I do wrong?
Yep.
You know, and not that you want to hear it, but you do want to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm always concerned that we're teaching the Bible correctly. Mm-hmm. I mean, some may disagree with how we teach the Bible. I get that, but from what we believe, and we believe God's word says, I'm always concerned. Okay, am I communicating this clearly? And so I'll ask her, and if I really want the truth, I ask my daughter.
Yes.
She will tell me straight up.
Yeah.
Sarah, what did you hear? How did you know? Well, Dad, when you said that, maybe she'll be very honest, and she's not. She's usually pretty kind about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a big thing.
That's huge for me because, like I said, I don't have that background, and so even though, and she has the middle school background and the teaching background, so for me to go, hey, was my point clear? Like, did it come across the way I wanted it to come across?
Right.
What can I? And she's always telling me different learning styles and different things I can do. And some of them are harder in the youth group context, but she's always like spitballing. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this, and I hear them and I do appreciate them. But sometimes I'm just like,
the way kids learn now. When I was growing up, right?
Yeah.
You sat at your desk, and if you had a question, you raised your hand. You didn't get up. You weren't doing anything else. You didn't have fidget spinners.
Yeah.
You didn't have poppets.
Yep.
You didn't. You couldn't have your. We didn't have phones. We didn't know what cell phones were when I was in high school. I heard they were coming up with cell phones. I'm like, that's never going to last. I can remember thinking that. So the way that kids learn these days is on a different level. And when you teach, you have to work hard at not getting distracted when someone is doing 2 or 3 things at once.
Yeah.
Like I have a couple grandsons, and they will be playing the PlayStation or looking on YouTube, and I'll be talking to them or work. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you're not paying attention to me.
Yeah.
When in reality, they hear everything I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now, they may choose to ignore me,
Yep.
which doesn't go real well in my home. Or they're like, okay, I got it. Did you hear me? And so I think a lot of it is on the teacher to readjust the teaching style so that the kid can learn. Now, I'm not saying there should be disorder and the kid should be able to do, but I mean, sometimes they have to be doing one or two different things.
Yeah.
And now,
Yes, they do.
do I think, what is that a byproduct of? Many things, but I think culture, adolescent training, I think all of that has to do with it. What kids struggle with paying attention, and staying focused on one thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times you don't really want them to be just doing one thing, because that's actually more distracting to them than playing with something or doodling on a piece of paper and listening at the same time. Yeah. So in the service, like on Sundays, I see people and I watch what they're doing while I'm talking, and I notice, and it doesn't, like babies crying, that doesn't bother me. People getting up, that doesn't bother me. People talking back to me doesn't bother me.
But people sitting there staring, not doing anything,
that bothers me.
That bothers me too.
It doesn't bother me when they're, if they're looking at their phone, they're looking up at me. That doesn't bother me. But when I see that comatose,
Just ghost
stare, it's like a post turkey dinner stare. You're like,
Are
I'm
you
like,
alive?
oh, they're going,
Are
they're
they alive?
slipping over the edge. And so that can be a struggle.
And for me, like, just kind of on that point, this has nothing to do with marriage, Dalton. You got to help us get back on track.
No.
But like,
we were talking about ministry.
I came from a theater type background. So on stage, when something good happens, people applaud or clap or laugh. And so that's why I feed off of, like, if kids are laughing when I'm speaking, fine. Like, that's good. If kids are raising their hands and asking,
that means they're listening.
Off the wall questions. Okay, fine. Like, I can divert that and keep my lesson going.
Yeah.
Like, I can kind of reflect those really well. And that's where she helps me, like, hey, you're letting them walk all over you. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just goofing around with them, and they're listening.
And we got here by asking our wives,
Yeah.
how did we do today?
Yeah.
And, I would say sometimes you tell me that I could have explained it differently, or maybe people didn't understand it the way you intended it,
Right.
which is quite possible because you know how we get when we start speaking. It gets all over because I don't really use notes when I speak.
Yeah, that's insane to me.
I don't use notes.
I do.
Which
I use a lot of notes.
You got 12 minutes.
We got 12 minutes. Okay. Not that we're rushed.
What's next?
You got a
I would say answer the question.
Answer the question? Okay. So we got a question on our Instagram, and the question said, why do we need marriage if God should be our love, our first love? Is that what it said?
is
First
that
love.
right, producer? Okay.
So why do we need marriage? And I think let's let the ladies answer
Yeah,
this.
I'd like to hear how they answer
And
this.
just kind of see what they say. Why do we need marriage?
Do you need my Bible?
God is our
I
first
don't have my
love.
glasses.
Oh,
I would say, just referencing back to what you said in the beginning, that men and women, we are created differently, and there are traits that women possess that men don't possess. And like you said, it's that coming together as one. And I don't know the exact reference, but I know it is referenced by Paul. And remember, I told you we were going to have to reference that. Do you happen to know the reference at all?
Do you know where Paul talks about it not being good? I think it's Corinthians. I know what you're saying. You're talking about Paul saying it's not good for man.
It's
man
better
to be
for man to
marriage.
be alone than to be married. And to speak to that, and this is just completely what I believe. I mean, we're human. We're living in 2023, and as Christians, it's really, really difficult to be single.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to date, and it's really
I can't
difficult to
even
be engaged.
Imagine.
It's to me.
Ew.
I don't know.
Yuck.
I was gonna say I don't know the language you can
No.
use on here, but it sucks. And if you have to take that out,
No,
I'm sorry.
Edit.
It sucks.
no.
And so I do think that, I mean, we are intended to marry
Yeah.
to, keep away from even temptation, this temptation of sin. Like I said, dating as a Christian is hard. That's why that going to a Christian college, it's that joke. You come away with your MRS degree. It's really, really difficult. Again, and I don't think that's the sole reason, obviously. I know that there's a lot. God had a definite plan when he created man and he
Right.
created woman as, a unit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find.
What do you
it.
think,
Hold
Sue?
on.
We'll come back
Yeah,
to reference then.
I think, God created us. He said it was not good for a man to be alone. He created us to be a helpmeet. So
Yes.
automatically, we're supposed to be together.
Yeah. And in the reference, if you find it, read it out. But in the reference, Paul is talking about the context of ministry. And we kind of had mentioned, hey, when you're married and you have families, there's a struggle to do ministry because you can't commit 100% of your time to the dedication of the gospel because you have to split your time to your home life, your wife, and those things. And so I think, and in the context of the verse, if JP finds it, we'll read it for you. But that's what he's saying. Like, yes, you need a helper, but if you want to pursue ministry, it is better to not be distracted by those things because you can, like, you're stuck in your house, you're stuck with your kids. Not that you're stuck.
And so, do you recall what the distraction was that Paul was referring to? Let me read it.
Yes, I do. Did you find it? Yeah. I think it was sexual.
But I
wasn't it?
say, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But I say to the unmarried and widows that it's good for them if they remain even as I. So that tells us Paul was probably single.
Paul was single. Yeah.
But if they do not have self-control, let them marry, for it is better for them to marry than to burn. Burn, i.e., meaning burn with lust. So we have to look at this in a godly theological way. God created sex.
Yep.
It's a
Yeah.
great thing. Thank you, God. Thank you. Right? But in the right context, right?
Yes.
And so if you're going to be distracted by feeling like you need to be married, because one of the byproducts of being married is
The gift. Yeah.
the gift of having sex together, of having love, expressing your love towards one another. I don't like the term "making love" because it doesn't make sense to me. And so understanding that some people actually have a gift to be able to be single. I personally have not met very many men that have that gift. A few. And Paul's relating here. Hey, if you're gonna struggle with lusting, then maybe you should get married.
Yeah.
But it's better if you have the gift that you stay unmarried. Why? So you can be devoted to Christ, right? And so, and I think when you read that and understand the context, you're like, well, yeah, that would make sense. When I was a dean, I had 80 some single guys. There wasn't one that I could recall that had the gift of being single. Why? Because God in his graciousness and goodness created us with these desires that were actually honoring to him, and he designed it that way, and it pleases him that married couples enjoy each other. That's a good thing. So men have that in them, women have that in them. We have those desires, but the only way that we can enter into that without sinning is being married.
It's marriage. Yeah.
And so that's the important thing. And so understanding it the way Paul writes it, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't have the gift of being single.
Me either.
No. I don't.
It is not good for me to be alone.
I learned when I was 15 when I saw her running up the lacrosse field, field hockey field. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be single. It's just it's just the way it was.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So to answer the question, here's what I think about if Jesus is supposed to be our first love, then why does he want us to be married? What we can't do is look at those as mutually exclusive. Right? Should God be our first love?
Yes.
100%. And here's the best part about that. He also says, it's not good for man to be alone. So you have these two competing thoughts. And you have to realize that God said it's not good for me to be alone, but he wants me to be devoted to him as the first love. This is going to shock some people, I know, when I say this. I do not need Sue to complete me, and she doesn't need me to complete her. God completes me. God completes Sue. And as in our walk with each other, if we're not focused on God as our first love, then our relationship is going to be out of sync. And so if we seek him first and we're looking to him first and we're making him a priority, I will love her way better and she will love me way better.
Well, and I think there's a reason that God refers to his church as the bride.
Yeah.
Like, I think
it's the picture.
It's the picture to model that, and I think it's an example of how Christ loves us, the way you should love your wife. And so I think to answer the question, like,
well, he even says, "Hey, love just like Christ, husbands love your wife, just like Christ
loved the church." Yeah, I mean, there's sacrificially like willing to die.
Yeah, there's an example there.
Yeah.
Are they mutually exclusive? No, they're not. They're actually intertwined.
Yeah,
and they work in tandem.
It shows the hierarchy.
Absolutely.
God, Jesus,
and it's fortunate in God's economy and his foreknowledge and grace and mercy that he allows us to be with people that we're like, that we enjoy being around, and that we're attracted to. That's not sinful. That's actually a good thing. However, all in the context of marriage.
Yeah.
Which, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
That's very hard.
That is the
That's the hard part. So, anyway.
I think we're about running out of time for this week. We're going to keep talking, kind of get into our stories of how we met each other.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. So we're going to have a part 2. Thank you so much for the question. If you have more questions you want us to address on the podcast, leave them in the comments, leave them on the Instagram post, leave them wherever you are.
Yep.
Spotify, wherever you're at. Thanks for listening. Don't forget,
keep your nose in the book.
I like how you pulled it. Keep your